What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another waiver wire show here at Fantasy and Frames. Our second week in a row doing this. Going to take you through now to the end of the fantasy football season. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. With me, I got my co-host, Jay, Fantasy J77, aka Gator J, aka Gator, aka one of the best producers behind the scenes in the fantasy football community. How you doing, Gator?
I'm doing good, sir. It's week 5 is here. I'm ready to get some waiver wire talk in. I think we're gonna have a little bit lighter of a waiver wire this week than we have had the first 4 weeks, at least to this point, anyway.
No, absolutely. I mean, when we talk about, we're entering bye week season, the waiver wire gets a little thinner. Although there's something to be said that, just because a player may be on waivers that's not playing this week doesn't mean you shouldn't pick them up because,
Correct.
2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, that can pay dividends for your roster for people who are not paying attention. I also want to say this, and it's something we haven't talked about. I want to say in a lot of our shows is waiver wire strategy. You wake up the next morning. If you're using the sleeper app, chances are Eastern time, you're waking up at 3 a.m. like this guy. Or if it's on ESPN, at 6 a.m. your waivers are going through. Always check to see, especially for ESPN, not so much sleeper, because sleeper doesn't really operate like this, but for like ESPN, always like sort by projected points on your app, and then and go to like the zeros, because that'll tell you who people are dropping and adding. And, depending on the size of the bench of your league, you may be able to find people like, oh, they shouldn't have dropped that person for this person just because they were on bye. That's their mistake. I'm going to pick that person up, put them on my roster, put them on my bench, and pay dividends later. Yep. But so just a little nugget there of information, a little game within the game strategy. For those who haven't already, make sure you head over to fantasyandframes.com. Check out our waiver wire article on offense as well as defense, special teams. Bill Mustafa put that together, as well as read my IDP waiver wire article, both of them for week 5. If you don't want to read the articles, you can want to get a synopsis of them. Go to our TikTok page, go to our Instagram page, see all the different graphics we have there. Shout out to FF Chalupa Batman, aka Zach. We're putting all those together.
Jorge, real quick, you had your PSA right there, which is very, very important. You hit on it at the very beginning about bye weeks. And,
yes,
grabbing players that even though they may be going on their bye week, that, right, that's something that people will drop these players. Like this week, you've got Cleveland, the Chargers, Seattle, and Tampa Bay. Next week, you have Green Bay and Pittsburgh. The following week, week 7, there are 6 teams on bye. So you may start seeing some of these, instead of it being the mid players, you may see some of these teams dropping these other players just to get somebody in to fill that position and hoping that they can get them back. Keep an eye on that waiver wire. As soon as you see somebody drop somebody that you want, grab them. You can grab them a week ahead. It doesn't matter. Stash these players for the foreseeable future. There's a player that I'm going to talk about later on that I think you should go ahead and stash right now, even though he may not play for another week or two.
Yeah, especially down the stretch, running backs start to be emphasized more in, teams' offenses. I know it's a generalization to say, well, in the cold weather months, those running backs really pay dividends down the stretch in the fantasy playoffs. Yes, that happens to be the case. Do I have numbers proving that? No. But does that more often than not happen to be the case? Sure, your stud wide receivers are still going to be your elite wide receivers. You're still going to start them. But people that have historically, there's one running back that just jumps to my mind because I roster him every year, and it's about 2 weeks from now that I'm like, screw this. This person's a roster clogger. I don't need them on my bench. And then come November, December, all of a sudden he starts stringing around double-digit games, and then not just double-digit games, but 40 or 20-point games. I'm talking about AJ Dillon. I guarantee you, there's somebody in your league who has AJ Dillon who's like, F this. Yeah, exactly.
I'm that guy. I've been saying it for like a week and a half now.
Yeah, I'm that guy too. I have him in a lot of leagues. I went 0 RB, thinking Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be there anymore. The wide receiver Jordan Love thing is not going to be clicking. They're going to be relying on those 2 running backs. I drank the Kool-Aid, and and I'm sure a lot of you out there did as well. Don't give up. Don't lose hope on AJ Dillon down the stretch of the season if you can afford to keep him on your roster. If you can't, and you're other members of the league who are listening and paying attention, and you see AJ Dillon's free, you go get him. You go get him before the person who dropped him, tries to play the game of like, oh well, they won't notice because he's at the bottom of the waiver priority list. Like, no. Who's at the bottom of the waiver priority list? Gator, there was one person, I want to say 3 years ago. It was a fairly newbie league. Got Andrea in the chat here. I have AJ Dillon on my bench. Good. If you can afford to keep him there, he will pay dividends. It's a historical trend that he's shown over the course of the fantasy season. Anyhow, so there was somebody. It was the year that Saquon Barkley had an ankle injury. Coincidentally, we're in that same situation now. So he has an ankle injury or a high ankle sprain. And somebody was dumb enough to drop him.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day I'm sorting through it and I go and I sort by lowest projected point totals. And I'm like, this person on IR out. And I'm like, who the hell is out? And I'm like, Saquon. Did somebody just seriously drop Saquon Barkley? Like it was a newbie league. Like that would not happen. Leagues that I normally participate in. But my point is that you'll be surprised. For example, we've gotten a lot of questions on the Start and Sit show on Sunday mornings, the pregame show from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., where it's like, I have 3 elite quarterbacks. What should I do? Should I use them for trade bait? And we've talked about it a few times where it's like, the value of these, elite quarterbacks may not be what you're hoping them to be.
Mm-hmm.
So in leagues like that, right? Somebody might drop a Patrick Mahomes or a Lamar Jackson because they have other elite quarterbacks. And it's like, oh, Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson just happen to be floating around because they're on a bye week. You snatch them up. And we had Drew Scott here. That's a prime example of why it's just as important to check who has dropped as it is who has picked up once waivers run. 100%. Absolutely. Always do that. That's why I get up, that's why I get up early on Waiver Wire Wednesdays. It's like, for me, it's Christmas every Wednesday. Like, ooh, who did I get on waivers? Who are the people that are available that I could still get before other people wake up?
We say beat the waiver wire, but it's not really beating the waiver wire. It's beating the dropped players, right? Because if we're up at 3:00 when the waiver wire actually runs and somebody, does it on for instance, Sunday afternoon, a Monday afternoon, and forgets that they made that claim and that player that they dropped, it happens. If you're the first one in there, usually after waivers run, you can free agency, first come, first serve. You don't need a priority on that.
Yep, 100%. For those of you who are on Facebook and or Twitter and you want to get some questions asked, by all means, we're here to answer all your waiver wire questions or any questions you might have, but we would highly recommend you doing them over on YouTube, as we can actually see said questions on YouTube and then answer your questions. But let's do like we did last week, Gator. Let's stick a little bit, to the framework we established, quote unquote framework. Get what I did there? Fantasy.
Yes, I like what you did. I like what you did there.
I appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit about just a few things to take away from this past weekend. Let's talk about the obvious here. Bill No, I'm not going to go Taylor Swift. You're free. You're fine. Well, next week, but it does involve the game that she was at. And Bill Mustafa, like I said earlier, over at fantasyandframes.com, put out the waiver wire for week 5 article. And one of the quarterbacks that he suggested that on Sleeper is rostered in 6% of leagues is Zach Wilson. Let me ask you, given the matchup this week, I believe they're taking on, is it Chicago or Denver? I forget right off the top of my head.
The Jets are at the Jets are at week 5. There it is. The Jets are, that's the Giants. The Jets are at Denver.
At Denver. Okay, cool. So, we saw Denver. Look, they made Josh, oh my God, Sam Howell look elite. They made Justin Fields look elite. Denver, the Tua Tagovailoa look elite. Thank you, Andrea. Appreciate it. Man, I am so happy for this kid who just played his heart out on Sunday Night Football. It was great. It looked fantastic. They were making jokes that if, like, the Taylor Swift fans, this is their first time watching football, they could have swore that Zach Wilson was the elite quarterback, not Patrick Mahomes, right? Great story, great narrative. We all heard the fallout from that. Rodney Harrison on the post-game show calling him garbage. Everybody, including Micah Parsons on his podcast yesterday, came out and said, no, he's not, he's not garbage. He just needs time to develop. I got Kerry Whitaker Markham here. Zach played a hell of a game. He did play a hell of a game.
Yes, he did.
Absolutely. You had Chris Jones of the Chiefs, on that post-game show, just give him props. There's, outside of Rodney Harrison, I have heard nobody in the big mainstream media talk down about Zach Wilson.
Well, I don't know how these so-called analysts are able to, I mean, I understand they played the game, whatever. This kid this year, take out, gets thrown in week 1, prime time, opening night, whatever. Yes, week 2, he's playing probably one of the best defenses in the league in Dallas. He throws 3 picks. Look what he did last week against New England. Not great, but then this week, prime time, back at home, Aaron Rodgers is in the building.
Yeah.
Maybe a little pep talk, maybe a little bit of, hey, kid, you can do this. We did this in the, through all of camp, whatever. Yep. Throws 39, completes for 245 and 2 touchdowns. No interceptions.
And scrambled for a 2-point conversion.
Yes.
Where I'm kind of going with this is, what do you, let's say you're in a really deep league and like a 4-team teamer, 16 teamer, and he just happens to be available on your waiver wire. What do you have to see from him to make him starting potential for you? Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
well, I mean, I think we saw it already. I think we saw it last week. The Kansas City, that front 4 is not horrible. That front 4 for Kansas City is pretty damn stout. And he hung in there. And he wasn't afraid to take, step up, and he wasn't afraid to deliver the ball. He wasn't afraid to take a hit. And he was able to not go outside of the framework of throw interceptions. He did throw the ball away a couple times. He needs a little bit of help on the offensive line.
A little bit of help. Yeah, no, you're not wrong. Well, I think they brought in more tight ends to help with blocking, which kind of helped give him time to set up whatever he needed to do. Where I'm going with this is, though, we talked about Bill Mustafa's article again. He talks about Mitchell Trubisky. He talks about Sam Howell. He talks about Zach Wilson. Out of those 3 quarterbacks, and don't be wrong, I'm aboard Sam Howell's bandwagon, being a Commanders fan. If there was ever a week to competently start Zach Wilson, it would have to be this week against Denver, who are allowing the most fantasy points to quarterbacks, on average 25 points a game. That's pretty freaking good. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. And then next week they got Philly, then a bye. Then they get the Giants. That would be a nice little juicy matchup, depending on what is that? That's going to be week 8. And on bye that week, I guess there is no bye for week 8. So, I mean, depending on what you have there, but that's a nice little matchup in week 8. Denver, and then week 5, the Giants week 8, Vegas week 10, and then it gets a little rough for him a couple times there. But
I mean, but dare I say, if he has another stellar performance, he's somebody that we're confidently using as a streaming option in plus matchups.
Well, all jokes aside, I actually, knowing Bill was doing the waiver wire, I actually asked Bill, because of the issues in Cincinnati right now. If you're sitting there with Joe Burrow, are you even thinking about starting Zach Wilson over Joe Burrow at this point? And of course, the answer is no.
Sure,
but that's there wasn't very many people that you weren't starting that you were starting Burrow over and not Zach Wilson over. So the question, I mean, he's getting closer and closer to almost a depending on who he's playing, almost a must start. And I think the other side of that coin that we've been talking about this for a few weeks with Garrett Wilson. I think we were a little hesitant to start Garrett Wilson. Now it's like, put him in. Just let Garrett Wilson's talent do it, because Zach Wilson will get him the ball.
I will say this: if I'm in Superflex leagues, I'm making Zach Wilson a priority this week because I'm banking on him repeating this performance or even getting a better performance against Denver. It's probably going to take me a little bit more, him stringing along a little bit more better performances before in a one quarterback that I'm going to be wanting to rush there. Let's see here. Andrea in the comments here over on YouTube, which, by the way, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Andrea, my 14 team is Superflex. I have Stafford and Geno. I was on board Team Stafford this week. I put him in my start column last week. I swear to God, this guy just needs touchdowns. He just needs a couple more touchdowns. I mean, he had the game winner, right, with Puka Nacua over the middle, which was fantastic if you're the Nacua manager. Humble brag. But it's
there's a great question. There's a great question there. You got Zach Wilson playing Denver, and Stafford is playing Philly this week.
Oh, it's Zach Wilson for me. Which, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that.
There's the other thing. Geno's on bye, so you almost have to go get Wilson to put in there.
This is true. Wow. Well, I thought I was going to throw up a little bit in my mouth when I said Zach Wilson over Matt Stafford playing Philadelphia, but I don't know. There's something there. We got a question here from Malcolm over on Facebook. Sam Howell or Zach Wilson? This is hard, Malcolm. You can't do this to me, man. You're testing my heart loyalties.
Well, it's really not that hard, though. It's really, really, really not. You got Zach Wilson playing Denver and Sam Howell playing the team that just gave up to Denver 31 points after going up, playing Chicago. So, I mean, the worrisome part there is
night games kind of suck always, and so I don't know. I always get weary about players on Thursday nights. There's something about it. It's always a crapshoot with them. I don't know. I like Zach Wilson again, giving up the most points. Denver, that is his opponent this week. Let's see here. We got Sleepy. Sleepy, I believe this is the first time we've seen you on a comment section. Welcome to Fantasy and Frames' YouTube, and happy to talk about your comment here. Y'all think it's bad I'm starting 3 Dolphins players, Tua, Chan, and Waddle? No, I do not think that is a bad. Why would I think that that's a bad thing? I don't. 3 players on an explosive offense. Yeah, they ran into a little bit of a buzzsaw, quote unquote, a little bit of a buzzsaw against the Bills, but this is still a high flying offense. I don't think that's
the plus side to this, especially this week, is they're playing the Giants. Play every single Dolphin you have. Play every one of them.
Yeah, I think you're good. It's playing in at home too. No, don't feel bad, Sleepy. Don't sleep on your 3 Dolphins. You see what I did there, Gator? He said sleep on your Dolphins because his name is Sleepy. Anyhow, we got a question here from.
It's not as good, Jorge, when you got to point it out.
I know, but it's so rare. Funny things that I have to point them out for my own self.
That's right.
So we got Drew here saying, "Don't be okay." Yes.
Okay, Homer.
I didn't say that, Drew.
No,
I was thinking.
I get what he's saying here, and I wasn't fading Stafford. I was pointing out the fact that Stafford is playing a solid defense, whereas Wilson is playing Denver.
So, I mean, yes, they're giving up the 7th most points, the Eagles, that is, to the quarterback position. Denver's giving up the 1st. I mean, you want the easiest matchup or the 7th easiest matchup? I mean,
it's super flex, so Andrea can play both of them anyway.
Right. So, let's see here. Let's get into a couple plays here and I'm not going to tell you everything that Bill talked about. I guess I gave away quarterbacks a little bit here, but
I've got one more quarterback for you to add to that list.
Go for it.
And that's Josh Dobbs. We watched him in the first week against your Commanders and absolutely was just all over the place. The last 3 weeks, though, he was quarterback 32 out of 32, of course, in week 1. Last 3 weeks, QB 5, QB 16, QB 8. 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. We all thought that Arizona was going to be a team, and they have been in every single game. They're not winning a bunch of games. Of course, they did beat Dallas, but they're not winning games. But they are in every single game. And when you look at what Josh Dobbs did against what we think is, if not the best, the second best defense in the league, 28 of 41, 265, 2 touchdowns, adding in another 12 attempts rushing for 48 yards. He was only sacked 1 time. So Josh Dobbs, you might want to keep him on your radar in that super flex position, especially with these bye weeks that are coming up.
Here, I'll go a step further with that. He led his team to a victory against Dallas, who at the time was one of the best defense. It's still a top defense, don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. He did what he did last week against the 49ers. If you can go against back-to-back elite defenses and put up fantasy viable numbers here, I don't care whether it's a super flex or it's a 1 QB. If my quarterback's on bye, I want Josh Dobbs taking his place on my starting roster.
Yep.
Because if he could do that against those defenses, then I'm not really concerned too much about, he made rookie Michael Wilson come out of obscurity, for the first couple weeks of the season, and he just balled out, man. You feel so good for Josh Dobbs and what he's accomplished on a short time frame. He came in third week of the preseason or last week of the preseason to be the starting quarterback there when Colt McCoy got released. Just fantastic story. Got a comment here from Drew. Assuming I get Jaleel McLaughlin off waivers, do you start him, Antonio Gibson, or Cam Akers at RB2, trying to fill a hole Rachaad White's bye week has left? That is a good question. I'm not starting Cam Akers. I don't want anything to do with that Minnesota backfield until there's more clarity. So now it really comes down to Antonio Gibson or Jaleel McLaughlin. McLaughlin. There we go. Antonio Gibson fumbles too much, gives the ball up too much. I'm actually going to Jaleel in this matchup.
Yeah, it's a hard one for me just because of the Jets. They're playing the Jets, and that Jets D is damn good. But I think out of those choices, and I want to say Akers so bad right here, but again, like you said, you can't trust what's going on in Minnesota in that backfield. They didn't want Madison to have the ball. Then as soon as they get Cam Akers over there, they give him the ball, and he's done decent with it. So, I mean, yeah, I guess at that point it is McLaughlin that you have to play, right?
Yep, I think so. Washington has seen enough with Antonio Gibson running the ball. He puts the ball on the ground too much. That's firmly Brian Robinson's backfield. What's up, Albert? How you doing? Sleepy, back again. I've been asking my friends this, but do you all think I should trade Stevenson because he's been bad? I don't think so. I think volume is going to things are going to regress back to the median here. I think he's going to be just fine. More importantly, the question is, if you trade Stevenson, who do you have left to replace him?
That's the question right now with these running backs going down the way they're going down, and you've got a healthy body back there that we know is a good player and a stud. I mean, they went up the last 2 weeks. They've gone up against the Jets and Dallas. It's hard to run the ball on those two teams.
Right.
So, I mean, don't worry. They got New Orleans, Vegas coming. So I would hang on to him.
Got here another question from Malcolm. If Jeff Wilson is playing this week, question is he playing? I don't know if he's playing. I know he's eligible to come off of IR. And if he does, does this affect the 2 Dolphins backs?
Wait. The Dolphins have 2 backs? Hang on. They got a Chan and who?
Mostert.
Oh, yeah. Must start. Yeah, that's right. No, it doesn't. Jeff Wilson is not going to. I think after the last 2 weeks, they have figured out that a Chan is the one running back that they want. They only gave him the ball 8 times, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. They gave Mostert the chance too. 7 carries, 9 yards. I think Achan has clearly said, this is my backfield from now on.
Well, not to mention that, like you saw Mostert put the ball on the ground a couple times on Sunday, and they still gave him opportunity after that. So it's not like a Belichick where it's like you put the ball on the ground once, you're riding the bench for the rest of the game. Even then, Jeff Wilson last year, I think, was a better goal line back, AKA found himself in scoring position more often than not, which is why people were kind of hyping him to be the RB1 heading into the season before he got injured. I think it's still Mostert and Achan, with Achan kind of taking, like you said, kind of taking the reins here of being the guy. So I don't think anybody's at 2 running backfield, adding Jeff Wilson this week. So thank you very much for keep these questions coming. If you have more waiver wire questions, happy to help. Drew here says, appreciate it, fellas. I know it's gross. It is gross, but you know what? That's okay. That's why you're here. That's why we're here also to help you get through these bye weeks and get you ready. Speaking of Drew, you can find Drew, Rhett, and Chris on 4th and Frames tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern, streaming live on our YouTube channel, Twitter, and Facebook, as well as our other podcasts. We call it Fantasy and Frames Wednesdays. We have our Dynasty show called Dynasty 365 at 8 p.m. We have 4th and Frames, which basically gets you ready for your week's matchups. Then we have to cap it off at 10 p.m. Eastern, Shoot the Gap with Nate Markham and Hollywood Titan. So we definitely have a lot here. And while I'm boasting about all the stuff we have here, Thursdays, Stacey Perez, Bill Mustafa, and myself, we have our mailbag show. We have all the articles coming over at fantasyandframes.com. And then, of course, on Sundays, we have our pregame show from 9 a.m. to noon. And sometimes we even go a little bit over. So we get you ready, cover everything you need. So reach out to us on Twitter at Fantasy and Frames, or reach out to Gator at FantasyJ77 and everybody else here. So a lot of good work going over here. Mm-hmm. Got another one from okay, stop it, Sleepy.
No, Sleepy, you're not doing that. You're not doing that. Stop doing that.
Sleepy, you're not dropping Trevor Lawrence to pick up Josh Dobbs. I love it. I love it. I love it. Keep it coming. All right, Gator, let's talk about your perspective. Who is somebody that you're excited to add to your roster or to submit a claim for or put fab on this week?
Like I said earlier, this week is a lot slower of a week when it comes to the waiver wire for me. There's not necessarily one person that I'm saying I have to go have, but there is a wide receiver that I'm looking at and has progressively over the last few weeks been getting more and more involved, and from getting more snap share, getting more targets, and then absolutely crushing with those targets, and that's Michael Wilson. I know Bill put it in his waiver wire article as well, but he's 8% owned on Sleeper, 1% on ESPN. The issue with him was, of course, the quarterback situation. We didn't know what that was going to be. We also have the Hollywood Brown in that offense as well. But when you look at what Wilson is getting, they're both, him and Brown both received more than 7 targets. Yeah. Wilson just capitalized on his. And I think that is going to continue because where he's getting the ball. He's getting the ball in the end zone, in the red zone. And fantasy points, we want touchdowns.
You want touchdowns, absolutely, especially in the non PPR and half PPR. Give me any format. Give me the targets and give me the end zone targets. Absolutely. Andrew is asking, is Kenny Pickett or Mitchell Trubisky starting? I thought it's Trubisky. I thought Pickett's out for a couple weeks.
From what I heard, he's going to be at least a week, and Pittsburgh is on a bye next week, so it will be 2 weeks. So it will be, he probably won't be back to week 7. So Trubisky probably will be the start this week for Pittsburgh.
What's up, George? The boys, shout out Gator. Sleepy, what do you got for us here? You think I should drop Zay Jones to pick up that Wilson dude?
Yes.
Well, I mean,
it's simple already. Zay Jones is like the 4th man on targets for Jacksonville. He's fourth in line in the pecking order. And you have Michael Wilson, who is capitalizing on every target. Listen to this. This is how.
Oh, I thought he was talking about Zach Wilson. No, you're talking about that.
No, he's talking about yes.
Okay.
So week. This is the thing. Week 2 against the Giants, he had 3 targets, caught 3 balls. Week 2 against the Giants. Week 3 against Dallas, only 2 targets, caught both of them. Last, just Sunday against San Francisco, 7 targets, caught all 7 of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry. When he said Zach, he was talking about Zach Wilson earlier, and I'm like, giving up a quarterback for Zay Jones. Well, let's think about this. And I totally blanked that we were just talking about the wide receiver, Michael Wilson. So, my bad.
But would you do that? Would you drop Zay Jones for Michael Wilson?
In a heartbeat. And you said it perfectly. The pecking order there is fantastic. And not fantastic. It's horrible for Zay Jones. So let's get to an IDP waiver wire ad. Put that over at fantasyandframes.com. Folks, I'm going to be plugging fantasyandframes.com all night, every day. So you might as well just get used to it because we have a lot of great written content, a lot of great rankings. Just head over there. And it's somebody that, granted, a couple weeks ago, I wrote about him. I said, maybe it's my commander's bias coming in here, but you may want to stash this player because, depending on how things turn out in a couple weeks, we may be seeing an upward trend in trajectory. And, this past week, he put up 3 total tackles, 2 quarterback hits, a sack, and a tackle for a loss against the ever elusive Jalen Hurts. I'm talking about Chase Young. This week, week 5, Fantasy Pros ECR ranking, the defensive line 46. He finished as the DL 36 this past week with 10.3 points. That's not nothing, folks. And we see, yet he gets another sack. He played the largest percentage of snaps among the defensive line edge rushers in week 4. He had a 13.9% win rate and a 16.7% pressure rate. The pressure rate being the more important one here. And of course, these stats are courtesy of Pro Football Focus. He's starting to find his rhythm. Him and Montez Sweat. Gator, I don't, you're not the biggest IDP person, but let me jump back, to the COVID year. It was Chase Young's rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Montez Sweat, bookend edge rushers. It took him until about, remember that Pittsburgh game on Monday Night Football where the Commanders upset the Steelers, ruined their perfect season. It was from that point on to the rest of the year, even through to the Tampa Bay playoff game at FedEx Field. For IDP purposes, these 2 defensive ends were totally viable. Were in the top 12. Just for most fantasy points scoring for IDP leagues, these guys were it. And then we saw what happened with Chase Young. He tore his ACL the following year. Last year, he barely played at all. And now here he is, contract year. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option. I'm just saying, folks, if he's still available in your league, he should not be tomorrow in your IDP league. Let's see here. Got a question from Andrea here. I have Freiermuth. Should I pick up Ferguson, Cole Kmet, Zach Ertz, Logan Thomas to play this week? Hopefully it's just more for this week, because I think Freiermuth is going to be out for at least an extended period of time here, if memory serves me correctly. So let's find that information out for you.
Even if he's not, he's going to be out this week, and of course, then they have the bye next week, so it's at least a 2-week deal.
Yeah,
it's probably Ferguson, Logan Thomas,
then Ertz and Kmet. Or do you?
Yeah.
Are you sold on Kmet after his performance?
No. It's you go back to last year. Kmet was all touchdown dependent. He's done nothing to this point this year, and then has a breakout game. No, I'm not sold on Kmet. I'm not sold on anything that the Bears are doing. Jake Ferguson, though, on the other hand, he's averaging like 6.5 targets a game. The only thing he's missing, like a lot of these guys right now, is the touchdowns. He's got 1 touchdown on the year, but he's tight end 8 with that stat line. Tight end 8. And you can find him. He's only 52% rostered on Sleeper. I know that's, we like to stay under the 50%, but at 52%, he's still a very viable waiver ad especially when you're facing Cole Kmet, Zach Ertz, Logan Thomas, Pat Freiermuth. All of those guys are probably miles behind him in the rankings.
Right. And so then you talk about the other tight ends on Dallas, and one of the concerns was like, who's going to separate? Ferguson, he's gotten 25 targets. Guess what's the next number of targets the next tight end has, Gator? Just pick a number.
I'm going to guess it's like 7 or 8.
Close, 5. So
5.
He's definitely somebody.
Is that Shoemaker or Schumacher? Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's see here. Back to Zach Wilson or Sam Howell. Would it make sense to go with Zach since I have Garrett Wilson as your wide receiver? So
yes.
My thought. Okay, so for this matchup, sure, but I would be very hesitant to be like, should I go with this quarterback because I have this wide receiver? Like, they're not mutually exclusive. Like, you don't have to. How do I want to say this? Like, you shouldn't be afraid to start multiple players on the same team if they have a really good matchup. Like, for example, there was one year I had Aaron Rodgers and Devonta Adams. I was perfectly fine with that, as should everybody have been. Every single week, Zach Wilson and Garrett Wilson every week this year. No, I would have Garrett Wilson starting versus Zach more often than not. For this week against Denver, absolutely not a problem. Let's see here. What's the game are you most excited for week 5? Besides the bias I have towards my home team Commanders on Thursday Night Football, which last year for Thursday Night Football, if those of you who don't remember, forget it, because I'm trying to forget it because it was that boring. But all I know is the Commanders won, so that's all that matters to me. Gator, which game are you excited for this week?
I think the obvious one is the Sunday night game, Dallas, San Francisco. Right. But I am very interested to see what Pittsburgh's going to do with Baltimore and, of course, Philadelphia and the I believe it's the Rams. Yeah. So there's a couple of them, but I think the one that I'm most excited for is these two powerhouse defenses.
Wow.
That we all think. I'm not an IDP guy either.
That's what I was going to say. Like, you're taking the defensive matchup, which I would have thought I would have gone towards. I'm taking the one with the over under of 53 with KC and Minnesota in Minnesota. I think that should be a really good one here. Let's see what Kerry has to say.
Kerry, we stopped listening to Nate a long time ago.
Nate said one good game doesn't put him in as a starter. I didn't say every week starter, but for this week, possibly.
Do you think Nate's?
I think.
Do you think Nate's saying that because it was against his Chiefs?
No, you tell me that you think Nate's being a little bit bitter because he had one good against my Chiefs. And blah 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 blah. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm 100% joking. You know that.
I don't know if I am, but here's what I'm not joking about. For those of you who don't know, Nate Markham, our director of IDP here at Fantasy and Frames, has a lovely, amazing, funny, fantastic human being of a wife in Carrie. Carrie, we have to get you on the show. You can leave Nate doing whatever he needs to do or whatever. We would love to get you on the show just to say, hey, just a fantastic human being that everybody should know. And those who attend the Fantasy Football Expo, trust me, you already know Carrie Markham.
We're gonna have to send Carrie the link through, so she can jump in by her phone, because we know Nate's so damn scared that Carrie's gonna take over the show that he won't give her the password to the computer. He's got that on lockdown.
So Gator, I will say this. I want to say it was like 3 or 4 years ago, we decided to do an end of year holiday party, but we were streaming the party.
I saw the video.
Yeah. So it went really long, like 5 hours or so. And let's just say it ended at the end of the night when Nate was passed out on camera, and yet Carrie was still talking to the rest of us. Yes. So Carrie is a trooper. We love you, Carrie.
Yes.
CP back here again. Do you all think Jonathan Taylor will win some leagues coming back? Because I was going to trade him. Here's my question.
He was going to trade for him.
Trade for him. Excuse me. Put this in the chat, Sleepy, because I'm very curious to think what your thought process is here. What would you give up to get Jonathan Taylor? Why don't you put that in the chat and we'll answer it. We'll talk about it when you put that in there. just off the top of your head, who would you give up for Jonathan Taylor? Because it is a possibility that he does come back. They already said the head coach said that he's going to be practicing on Wednesday. And it's such a weird report because on Sunday he's like, yeah, he's eligible to come back and he's healthy, but he still wants to trade and they won't give him a contract. So you thought, oh, we're back at the standstill we were before. And then all of a sudden the head coach on Monday comes out and says, oh no, he'll be at practice on Wednesday. And I'm like, does that mean he's good to go for this week? Like, I don't understand what's going on here.
The best line was he'll be back with his team and he's happy to be back with his team. That was Jonathan Gannon's line. Or not Jonathan Gannon, Shane Steichen. That was Shane Steichen's. Yeah. I forget. But here's the thing with JT. And I know we've talked about this a little bit, so I won't go too long on this. JT has no leverage. If he wants a contract or if he wants a trade, he's got to play. Other teams do not want to trade for a player that is on the IR or there is possible issues. Was his foot really injured and that's why he was on IR? Or was it because of he didn't want to play, couldn't get a trade that he was on IR? Was it a combination of both? Which is probably the more likely scenario, is a combination of the both. Get away from the team. He's eligible to come back this week. If he comes back, if he's on that sideline, he has to play. He has no leverage at all.
That's a good point. So Sleepy's putting in here Ramondre and I believe Joshua Palmer.
It probably doesn't get done.
Yeah. You could try.
I don't hate the idea there.
I don't think it's a horrible offer, to be honest with you. My only question is, if you give up Ramondre to get Jonathan Taylor, and then Jonathan Taylor's still not playing, 2-3 a month later, do you have sufficient running back depth on your roster to survive not having Ramondre being inserted into your lineup during that time frame that JT may not be playing? Something to think about there. But I don't hate the offer if I knew Jonathan Taylor was going to come out and play starting this week.
Well, let's reverse this. Let's say you're the JT owner, right? And Sleepy sends you that offer. And let's say you both know, because right now Sleepy's taking a gamble that Jonathan Taylor is going to play.
Right.
But if you're saying that you have to know before you make this deal, if you know that JT's playing, you're not taking Stevenson and Palmer for JT. That's not happening.
That's a fair point.
You have to sell the fact that nobody knows if he's playing. So Sleepy is the one taking the gamble here. And that's just the way you have to sell it.
And with that being said, I don't think there's anything wrong with shooting your shot at this point. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Go see what happens. I don't think that's right.
Update us and let us know how that goes, because I want to hear how that trade works out if it does happen, for sure.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what happens there. Especially, and I would do that trade earlier in the week before practice reports start going and narratives start spinning.
Yeah,
Andrea. Okay, Andrea. Do you think Debo is going to play with his bad knee? I don't think the issue here is so much the bad knee. I mean, it is an issue. Obviously, having a bad knee is not something to be overlooked here. But I said it on Sunday during the pregame show. The defensive line for Arizona and the offensive line for San Francisco were going to be butting heads all day. McCaffrey was going to get his work, and he did. And I thought it was going to be a Brandon Ayuk game, not a Debo Samuel game. And I turned out to be right. Obviously, Debo getting hurt played a big role into that, but still Ayuk, he played very well. I anticipate this versus Dallas to be a similar set of circumstances. Brock Purdy, and here's the thing. Let me dive into why I like Brandon Ayuk so much this year. You go back to last year with Garoppolo, Purdy, and even Trey Lance when he played for that first week, I believe. Brandon Ayuk is the primary read for every single quarterback that has played for the San Francisco 49ers for the past year and a half. That should tell you something. If, as explosive as Debo is, as amazing as he is, as volatile as he is, and that's the key word there, volatile. Ayuk being the number one primary read just tells you all you need to know about what they think about Brandon Ayuk as the wide receiver on that team. Dare I say, be the wide receiver one on that team, whereas Debo is like the superstar one on that team. Does that make sense, Skater, how I'm phrasing that? The superstar one versus the wide receiver one?
No, and this is why I have Ayuk in just about every league that I could get him in. I probably out of I don't know 30 something leagues, I probably have him in 19 of those leagues. I just believe the talent is that damn good. And like you said, he is the first read on just about every single play. It could be a running play to Debo, and Brock Purdy looks up to see where Ayuk is and how open he is first. It's insane. To go back and answer Andrea's question here, though, when you look at Debo this past week, he still played almost 90% of the snaps, even with a bad leg. Can you start him going up against Dallas? Probably not. Not unless you hear some great reports coming out of practice.
Yeah. I'm about to get a little frustrated here at Sleepy because you had us thinking, man, this is a really good question. I don't know what's he going to do at the running back position, and then this guy comes in and says,
he did tell us earlier that he had a chain. He forgot that he left out Bijan and Miles Sanders, though.
I mean, yeah, I would definitely make that trade and not worry too much there. Or, to be honest with you, I would just keep Ramondre and you're still good. So more certainty there. So thank you, Sleepy. Appreciate that.
Yeah, that's it's a hell
let's
of a
get into another let's tease another situation here. Bill Mustafa, again, over at fantasyandframes.com, put out his waiver wire article today, and a player at the tight end position that we have to talk about, Gator, and this is going to hit close to home for you. Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith has been outproducing Kyle Pitts. Are these words that you never thought you'd say?
Yeah, I mean, it's
taking the deep breath there, Gator.
It's ridiculous when you look at these two players. Kyle Pitts is just completely disappeared, and for the first, I don't know, whatever it was, week or two. Okay, we can blame it on Desmond Ridder. We can blame it on. I don't think you can blame it on Desmond Ridder anymore when it comes to the tight end position. The other thing of that is Kyle Pitts isn't playing tight end. Kyle Pitts is playing wide receiver. Unfortunately, there's no dual designation, or they don't just swap him over to wide receiver due to money or whatever. That's going to be an issue because as a tight end, Jonnu Smith is just outperforming him because he plays that inline role. Pitts is playing more outside. You look at what Jonnu did over the last 3 weeks. He's gotten 12. He's gotten 20 targets and caught 15 of them. Compare that to Kyle Pitts, who, like I said, is a tight end playing wide receiver. He's gotten right about 20 targets, 22 targets, but caught 11.
Right. Johnny's just more sure-handed. He's just making more with his opportunities, which is. Let me ask you a question. All right. So if Ritter's the quarterback, right, you're going Jonnu over Pitts. If Taylor Heineke, who I think should be the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, was the quarterback, would you still feel the same way, or would you flip it where it's like, oh, I have more faith in Pitts?
I mean, I still to this day have more faith in Pitts as a talent, but until we see it on the field again, it's kind of hard to sit there and plug him in, right? I mean, right. I'll go back to Bill's article. When you compare the two, Jonnu and Pitts, Jonnu leads in receptions, reception percentage, yards, and yards per route run.
Yep.
That's pretty significant when you're talking about tight ends.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Let's get to an IDP person. We talked about a defensive lineman in Chase Young. Let's get to a linebacker. Troy Anderson with the Atlanta Falcons out for the year. with an injury. Caden Ellis, last man standing, heading into this week. And there's some guy by the name of Nate Landman, insert name into this linebacking core or whatever. He's taking up space. Nate Landman had 10 total tackles, 8 solo, 2 assisted, with a tackle rate of 22.2%, or a tackle efficiency rather. Just to give you an idea of what that tackle efficiency number means, take your elite linebackers, okay? They have 20 plus tackle efficiency. Nate Landman had 20 plus tackle efficiency. He came out of nowhere and he whooped some ass against Jacksonville in London this past weekend. And that's no disrespect to Caden Ellis. Caden Ellis is a serviceable linebacker, but damn, Landman came out to play. And if you are the Troy Anderson manager who lost him for the year, whether it's a Dynasty IDP or a redraft, pick up Landman. I guarantee you, and again, no disrespect, but like for most IDP players who are not hardcore, they're probably not going to know who he is. And he's probably, you could submit a claim for him in the super competitive leagues. In non-super competitive IDP leagues, you could submit a claim, but even if you didn't, he'd probably still be on your league's waiver wire tomorrow morning, and I would still pick him up regardless. You don't let somebody with that type of upside slip through the cracks, especially with bye weeks starting up this week. Gator, let's go through one more offensive player, then one more defensive player, and then we'll call it a wrap aside from taking more questions. Who's somebody on offense for waivers this week that you are excited for?
I'll hit on two real quick because they're going to be really, really short ones. Jameson Williams is eligible to come back this week. Don't know if he's, somebody that I could go get in and plug right in. But that's a thought. Kate Otten is somebody that I'm going to keep an eye on at the tight end position. I believe he's tight end. Let me just double check. He's in the top 10 or 15 of tight ends, thanks to the big touchdown he got this past week. And he is sitting at tight end 16 right now. Again, he's on a bye this week. So this is for, week 6, week 7 kind of a thing when you've got, Green Bay, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Dallas, Tennessee, the Jets, Carolina, Houston, between those 2 weeks are going to be on bye. The one I want to talk about, though, real quick is Wan'Dale Robinson. The usage for Wan'Dale is going up and going up and going up every single week. Okay. We know the New York Giants have nothing at the wide receiver position. But when you look last night at what he did, Sunday night, at what he was able to do, getting 6 targets, 5 carries, or 6 targets, 5 receptions for 40 yards. This is only his second week back. Remember, he was injured coming into the season, so he's not, but he got 64% snap share. He was on the field. I know they've got a rough go with Miami, Buffalo, Washington, and the Jets going over the next 4 weeks, but if he's going to be, if they're not going to rely on, what's that guy's name? Darren Wallowitz.
Walrus. It's Darren Walrus.
Walrus. Okay, yeah. If it's a guy they traded for, some guy out of Vegas that they traded for that we all thought was going to be really good. They're leaving him. They'll give him 1 target here and there, so that's how he's making his name or whatever. That's really upsetting to just about everybody in the fantasy community that Darren Waller is not being used properly. But you look at what the target share and what the option, or what the amount of time that Wan'Dale Robinson is on the field. He's only 30% owned in Sleeper and 1% owned on ESPN. That's going to be a guy that is going to get more and more targets every single week in this offense. And they proved that they were willing to do that over the last 2 weeks.
Got a comment here from Sleepy. What do you got here? Is Rashid Rice worth picking up? Heard a little bit about him on the Chiefs. Let me tell you his fantasy performances this year, and then you tell me whether or not you want to go get him. Week 1 against Detroit, 10.1 points in half PPR. Okay. Week 2 in Jacksonville, 3. Week 3 against Chicago, 8.4. Against the Jets, 4.7. Is that somebody you want to prioritize in your waiver wire?
Maybe not prioritize, but he's probably going to be the best option in that. I would rather have him than Sky Moore at this point for that Chiefs wide receiving core.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather. Wow, what's an analogy I could use? I would rather, have Brussels sprouts than cauliflower, but they're both kind of gross. So if I had to, but you're right. If you had to pick one, I think you're chasing the upside with Rashee Rice just because he does have that explosiveness to him. If you don't have to, don't. But if you do have to pick up a Chiefs wide receiver, I guess you could do worse than Rashee Rice. Got a question here from Hardcore Holly, like from the WWF back in the day. That would be pretty awesome. Question: should I trade Keenan Allen, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Damian Pierce for Tyreek Hill, Jacoby Myers, Jerome Ford? I have Jamar Chase already, and I feel like the duo of Tyreek and Chase would go crazy. Buddy, your duo.
Wait, you have Jamar Chase, Keenan Allen, and Amon-Ra right now, and you want to get rid of those two studs for Tyreek? I mean, I get Tyreek the name, but Jesus Christ, you have 3 elite.
Yeah. Like
you don't need Tyreek.
You don't need to worry about Tyreek and Chase going crazy. Chase, Keenan Allen, and Amon-Ra should be going crazy for you already. No, so
don't make that trade.
I say this with all due respect. I'm not going to sit here and tell you how you should run your league. Everybody should run their teams how they want to run their teams. Fantasy football is a game. It's fun. If you are a fan of Tyreek Hill, go get your guy. But if you want to win your league, you're not making that trade.
Here's why I'm going to tell you not to make this trade, okay? Because more than likely you're going to build that guy's team up, or I'm sorry, that person's team up with Keenan Allen and Amon-Ra just for getting Tyreek. Now, what's going to happen, unfortunately for you, is you're going to end up facing them in the championship, and they're going to beat you with the players you just gave them.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't highly recommend you do not make that trade. Let's see here. Got a question from Chris B. What's up, Chris? Claypool worth a stash in case he has the potential to land a contender?
No.
Even in his best situation, which was in Pittsburgh during his career, he was very streaky, right? So what I don't. Okay, here's another thing. If you have waiver priority or you have fab to spend, you don't have to go out and get waivers every single week. You don't have to spend just because they're available. So I would stay away from Claypool. I'm not about to waste any money or any priority on that. Let's see, Drew things. I think you should pick up Rice. He's a rookie, and his usage in terms of routes run and percentage has actually gone up every week while Skies have gone down. What's his productivity ended up being? It would be my comment to Drew. Okay, he's gotten more opportunity, and he's done what with it? Nothing. I'm sorry. If your name's not Travis Kelce, Jerick McKinnon, Isaiah Pacheco, Patrick Mahomes, I don't want you on my roster from the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm sure they may help in real football, win you games. It's not helping you win fantasy matchups. I don't know. I feel like Keenan Allen from Hardcore back again, Hardcore Holly. I'm just going to make that your name now, even though that's not what your name says on screen. I don't know. I feel like Keenan Allen is going to get injured, so not sure about it. You can't bank on
wide receiver. Predict
that. You have to go with what's there now. And right now, ever since he came back from, coincidentally, said injury last year, he's been one of the best wide receivers in all of fantasy football. You're not giving up there. Hardcore Holly again. I'm 3-1-2. I have Kyron Williams, James Cook, and Hurts, but I got mid tight end.
Everybody's got mid tight ends. Everybody.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you phrased it like that, because tomorrow night, Wednesday, part of the Fantasy and Frames podcast network, we have our show Fourth and Frames, where Drew, where Chris, and Rhett, they give you their bussin', discussin', and mid plays for the week. Maybe they'll have, a not so mid tight end for you to pay attention to. So tune in 9 p.m. here on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, as well as make sure to listen to the podcast if you can't catch the show live on Thursday mornings. All right, let me go with my final the IDP player for our show before we wrap up here. I'll be really quick. Jabril Peppers, ECR ranking this week, DB 44 over at Fantasy Pros. Week 4, he finishes at DB 34 with 12.3 points. Since week 2, Jabril Peppers has seen his run defense snap percentage go up while Kyle Duggars has gone down during that time span. No, I'm not saying drop Kyle Duggar. Don't start Kyle Duggar. What I'm saying is be impressed with Jabril Peppers and his usage.
Mm-hmm.
Combine that with his increased role at slot corner. Peppers is becoming that Swiss Army knife, type of safety that you may want to start paying attention to and pick up in your IDP leagues. He's dare I say, he's turning into that first round pick that the Cleveland Browns always wanted him to be before they traded him away and said, enough with you. But anyhow, we've gone over our time limit for today. Just want to thank everybody for coming into the chat here and asking your questions, putting your comments in there, as well as thank you very much for heading over to fantasyframes.com. Again, TikTok, YouTube, everywhere, subscribe, Facebook, Twitter, at Fantasy and Frames. Gator, as always, my friend, it has been a pleasure. I know you're on another show tonight. Let's give them a shout out because we love the guys over there. What show are you going to be on next tonight?
Yeah, so at 8:30, I'm gonna jump over to Triple Play Fantasy. I'm gonna hang out with Zach and the boys over there. We're gonna do a couple takeaways, talk about some prop bets a little bit, and then maybe get into some players that we are really, really high on throughout this week coming up in week 5. I'm gonna be over there with Brad, Doc, and Zach tonight. So come over there and join us over there at Triple Play Fantasy. And I do have to give you a quick update, Jorge. I don't know if you were paying attention in our Slack chat, but unfortunately, Drew is got a work thing tomorrow, so Drew will not be joining the guys tomorrow night. It will be Chris, Rhett, and yours truly on Fourth and Frames tomorrow. Okay. So yeah, you will get multiple Gator this week. You will get a lot of Gator tail hanging out on multiple shows this week.
I cannot wait for you to use Generation Z lingo and go bussin', discussing, or mid. Hardcore Holly.
I had to get them to explain that to me on what was what, because I just sit in the background and I'm listening and I kind of tune out that I'm not as hip as Nate Markham when he gets on that show, because Nate has those Gen Zers all around the house. So I had to get Chris to give me a quick direction or synopsis of what each word means.
Yeah. I wouldn't use hip and Nate Markham with Gen Z lingo all in the same sentence altogether. But he gave it a good.
How old I am? I use the word hip.
Hardcore Holly says, "Thanks, Andrea. Have a good night, everyone. You have a great night as well. We'll catch you tomorrow night, folks. You all have a good one."